Hey, hi. Existence is a crazy thing, huh? One moment, the pharmacist is giving me these little blue pills, and before I know it, a year has passed, the channel's dead, my entire self-image has been reconstructed from scratch, and the dissociation just isn't working like it used to. Depression and a host of other issues really beat me down this last year and change, and during that time, there were a number of days where I needed to just lose myself in something. I couldn't create, I couldn't go out, I could only exist until my wave of anxiety passed. Coincidentally, around the same time, I decided to check out Ranma 1/2 on the whim of a YouTube recommendation, and what started as a random interest turned out to have a lasting impact on my life. What caught my eye in the clips I saw was the way Ranma 1/2 plays with gender through its titular character's ability to transform. Even though Ranma is a guy by his own insistence, he'll often exhibit behaviors that he doesn't consider typically masculine through his female form, which serves as both an examination of gendered expectations in society, as well as insight into the personality of Ranma himself. He enjoys eating parfaits and gets flustered when he's put into situations that challenge his cool exterior. He'll let a girl carry him home when he's injured. And as the series goes on, he frequently uses the attractiveness of his female side to his advantage in spite of his hatred for the form. That's what grabbed me first and foremost, the gender swap elements and their impact on Ranma as a character. He's a shonen protagonist who can become a girl, and he's adorable, that charm aided by the show's excellent character design. Boy Ranma being a few centimeters taller than girl Ranma makes it so that most of his clothes hang loosely on the pigtailed girl. This makes collars and sleeves look puffier to cute effect, although sometimes the shift in proportions works to show off more of her proportions. And that's not even taking into consideration all of the unique outfits Ranma would never wear in boy mode. So many good outfits! Naturally, this height difference also accompanies a shift in how Ranma is perceived by other characters, his smaller stature reflective of that aforementioned vulnerability he opens up to. Height can often be used and exaggerated to convey power in a given moment. And while it might be easy to look at this and call it stereotypical that his female form would be portrayed as smaller and weaker, when taken in the context of Ranma's character and the work as a whole, it acts as yet another component in Ranma 1/2's examination of gender roles. Everything he does as a girl is still him, so any weakness displayed in that form is ultimately tied back to his image as a guy. It also just adds a cute physicality to Ranma's dynamic with Akane. In one conflict, he can be the strong protector his fiancée admires, towering over her as he does so. And in another, he can be a flawed goofball she has to look out for. They're a really sweet and wholesome couple, Akane herself being a tomboy who can't cook but can hold her own in a fight. Neither one is honest enough about their affection to ever make a move on the other without doubling back on it out of embarrassment, but they always support each other when it counts. Their love interests, on the other hand, are very open about who they're attracted to. A tangled web of unrequited emotion, their opposing bids for affection often build onto each other in various combinations, making them a key component in the story's longevity. As an example, let's start with Shampoo. She's a girl boss, sometimes she turns into a cat. More importantly though, she's in love with Ranma. So this puts her in opposition to Akane, as well as any other people who want to hook up with Ranma. That's simple enough. Ranma 1/2 has a slew of episodes centered on Shampoo pursuing Ranma and clashing with someone else who shares the same ambition. Now let's add in another subject, Ryoga. He's a himbo, and a pig. But unlike Shampoo, Ryoga is in love with Akane. Not only does that now introduce the potential premise of Ryoga pursuing Akane and coming into conflict with whoever wants Akane, but now we've got a new kind of overlap as well, because if Shampoo wants Ranma to herself, she needs Akane out of the picture, and the best way to do that is to get Ryoga to Akane. So now you have the premise of one love interest helping another as an alternative way to pursue the one that they want. Then you add in another character to try to stop that from happening, and another to try to stop the latter from stopping the former, and the cycle can just keep building on itself from there. Girls fight over a guy, guys fight over a girl. Heck, there are even times when Ranma has to fight over himself as the other gender. All of this serves to hammer in the selfish, flawed view of love this recurring cast has. The objects of affection are viewed through this possessive lens. If every other option is removed from the picture, that object must then belong to the one who desires it. And within that framework, it's accurate to describe those pursued as objects, prizes to be fought over and won. Battles often occur without the consent of the person who represents that so-called prize. Two characters simply confront each other out of their own self-interest. So it's fitting, then, that the actual driving relationship of the series is one between two abrasive teenagers who continuously insist that they don't desire each other. Ranma himself is often on the defensive in conflicts, and in situations where he does actively pursue his own desires, like the chance to nullify his curse, his efforts come up empty. While competitive, he's rarely possessive. And when coupled with the vulnerability present in his actions as a girl, Ranma's version of masculinity is able to be transgressive while still maintaining more traditional qualities. With that said, not everything in Ranma 1/2 is easy to assess. For example, episode 49, Ranma's Declaration of Womanhood, takes jabs at stereotypical femininity in a comedic way that only this series can. But it also has moments that might evoke different emotions from certain marginalized people. The premise of the episode is that Ranma hits his head and wakes up thinking he's a woman. While the rest of the anime makes it clear that, even in his girl form, Ranma identifies as a man, this episode subverts that. So now all of his actions are not that of a man presenting as a woman, but as a man who identifies as a woman presenting as a woman. He picks flowers, he offers to cook and clean, he feels comfortable in feminine clothing. The joke seems to revolve around undercutting traditional gender roles through Ranma's exaggerated femininity and utter rejection of masculinity. Akane challenges him to a fight, but Ranma refuses to throw a punch. When Ranma expresses concern that a dress or skirt would look bad on him, Akane responds that they look bad on her too. The point is clear that Akane isn't less of a woman for not being hyper-feminine, and that Ranma isn't more of a woman for rejecting all masculinity. The catch with this plotline is that even if this version of Ranma isn't stated to be any particular term outright, the events inherently lend themselves to a transgender reading, especially if the viewer has encountered similar situations as a gender non-conforming person. And this is indicative of other details scattered throughout Ranma's runtime as well. I'm not saying Ranma Saotome is trans, episode 49 notwithstanding, but Ranma 1/2 the series is unavoidably trans. Gender, as well as its impact on both individuals and collective society, are a pivotal aspect of the story. The protagonist frequently transforms between genders and is molded by the role he portrays. To what extent the work was created with queer people in mind is not information I have, and I acknowledge that my perspective is decades removed from Ranma 1/2's original airing, as well as the social climate of its time. But as a queer person with knowledge of my own experiences, as well as the depiction of queer subjects in anime and media in general, I recognize the tropes and vibes when I see them. It's the main reason Ranma clicked with me in the first place, and some of its content felt genuinely affirming to me during a tough transitional period in my life. There's resonant gender dysphoria stuff present in this very episode that I liked. Ranma's behavior and actions reflect his belief that he is a girl, so when he's forced to switch back into boy form, he becomes visibly uncomfortable with his body. In the scene I brought up earlier when Akane tries to console him about not looking good in women's clothing, he says, "You're a real woman." Akane doesn't have to perform femininity to be perceived as a woman, but in his current state, Ranma would have to, and that might not be enough. There's even a bit where he has to use a public restroom. And considering how big of a political sticking point bathroom laws have been in recent years, that's a heavy topic for a casual joke. I've done a lot of driving this year, which means I've had to make a lot of rest stops, and the fear of being harassed or assaulted for such a basic necessity is very real. There are times where I don't feel safe in either space, but I don't have the luxury of transforming on the spot. In Ranma, that anxiety is a punchline to him being out of character, which downplays the severity of what queer people in similar situations actually experience. While I wouldn't say this for the rest of the series, Ranma genuinely reads as a trans woman here. So when the cast rejects this new Ranma at every turn, let's just say I debated using she/her pronouns for this part. Is this transphobic? I can't fault anyone for taking offense to the episode, but if it's transphobia, it's within a broader framework that is trans as hell. So I don't think it's without value. I still connected with the struggle presented in this episode.
今までのことは自分の体験じゃないような、ひどく実感がなくて他人の記憶みたいな感じなんです。それが今朝、不意に本当の自分が目覚めたっていうか、女であることにやっと気づいたようなそんな感じなんです。
The feeling of awakening later in life, the disconnect looking back on my past self, that's not how everyone comes to terms with their identity, but it's how my experience was. I hit my head on a rock, and no, that part didn't happen. When people talk about transphobia or anything like it, there's often a dividing line between what's good and bad, equivalent to what's accepting or alienating. But it's not always a binary topic. Ranma 1/2 has some tricky content in this regard, but it's the messier material that often gave me the most to think about and appreciate. The other episode that stands out on this topic is the introduction of Tsubasa. After initially appearing to be an unrelenting lesbian who the cast try to put back on the straight and narrow, it's revealed in the end that Tsubasa is actually a male crossdresser. The twist leans into a common transphobic trope wherein a character's true identity acts as shock value, their secret a source of disgust or danger to other people. And while Tsubasa's case definitely ticks those boxes, there's more going on around it. Not only does the twist rely on his identity being hidden, but it also plays off of Ranma's situation in addition to Ukyo's history as a girl who abandoned her womanhood. It exaggerates the tropey gender reveal by having multiple separate revelations throughout the episode. The cast assumes that Tsubasa was attracted to Ukyo as a guy, but that's proven false. Ranma reveals he's a guy to Tsubasa, who then reveals he's a guy to Ranma. Finally, the whole episode is flipped on its head when it turns out that Ukyo already knew Tsubasa's identity from the fact that they both attended a boys-only school. The end result might be painfully heteronormative, but it's composed of factors that are anything but. It relies on the two most gender-fluid characters in the series and introduces a third in the process. Not everyone is going to vibe with that presentation for understandable reasons, and these certainly aren't the only examples in the series with a similar tone, but there are plenty of other moments that achieve the opposite effect. The anime has this tongue-in-cheek approach to fan service where all of the frontal nudity is centered on Ranma, the one girl who's actually a guy. So on that basis alone, the viewer's perception is already being challenged. Characters like Akane and Ukyo are shown to love Ranma the way he is, girl form and all. There was also the arc when he was stuck in girl mode, and he had to pose as a boy posing as a girl to disguise the fact that he actually was a boy in the body of a girl. Heck, that one time Ranma switched to boy mode while wearing a wedding dress. Or really any instance of Ranma wearing cute, girly outfits. My favorite screen cap I took is from an episode where Femme Ranma wears a swimsuit with boy written on the chest, and when I posted that on Twitter, I got a variety of replies from folks all across the gender spectrum who felt represented by that image in their own way. I like to talk about media that resonate with me, and the goal of my channel is to share that connection with other people. Even if a majority of my viewers won't care, or have already seen it, I want the ones who have never seen Ranma 1/2 to check it out and find something that resonates with them. And I know that my videos can reach people unfamiliar with the main subject, because that happened with the Bloom video, and it was very unexpected. Honestly, my primary fixation wasn't even on Ranma himself, but more so the aesthetic of Femme Ranma, the ideal gender-transcending boy, girl, boy. I liked seeing her beat people up and embody Ranma's more masculine traits, but it was equally fun seeing her wear cute outfits and be performatively hyperfeminine. She is extremely gender, and sometimes you need the type of good vibes that only come from an unrealistic, unattainable goal when you're being ground to dust by existence. While watching this anime, I managed to accept myself a little more. I'm non-confrontational to a detrimental degree, which means I struggle to be assertive about most things. So, since people would see me as male by default, I had been uncertain on if I could actually commit to being a trans woman. I put off going on HRT for so long that an image of me as a girl seemed unreachable. But if you had asked me how I actually felt, I'd have said that I couldn't see myself as a man. I wanted to be a girl. So when I watched Ranma 1/2 and projected so strongly onto Femme Ranma, it clicked into place that my ideal was that of a basic bitch trans girl, and that I was simply too insecure about not passing to actively assert myself as such. From there, I finally found the motivation to come out of my workplace, try some new outfits, paint my nails, and start voice training. And the key word there is start voice training. It needs a lot of work. I could have been doing most of that years ago when I first realized I was trans, but I wasn't confident in myself. Now, in part because of this anime, but also in large part because of some amazing friends, I'm focusing less on who I'm perceived to be, and more on who I want to be. Sure, I'll never be Ranma, but at least I'll actually get to be me. Hey. Hi. I never intended to take a whole year off. After the Bloom video, I spent a few months watching a bunch of shonen movies and outlining a pretty lengthy script around that. I just felt like it was missing something and couldn't figure out what that was. Typical writer's block, that's nothing new for me. But in March I started spiraling. Between working throughout the pandemic and learning to live on my own, the stress caught up to me. I frequently had panic attacks and would shut down for the day after I got home from work, often just to turn around and repeat the cycle again. Then time slipped away from me, and I gradually found myself months and months disconnected from my projects for this channel. YouTube has been a constant in my life since 2012. It's been one of the few skills I've managed to hone, the one creative outlet I've had to express who I am and see that progress from my teens into adulthood. But in 2021, I lost it. And that was scary. It was frustrating. It felt like I had lost a part of me at a time when I had nothing left to give. Even now, I'm still working towards regaining mental stability. But looking back on it all, I can at least say this. In my Bloom video, I said I was going to change. And you know what? I changed. I still haven't figured out what I want to be doing with my life in the long run, but for the moment at least, YouTube is what I know and enjoy. Maybe there will be a time when I outgrow it for good, but that hasn't happened yet. I'll see you in the next video.